My name is Jacob with PrintReach Customer Support, and today I will be teaching you how to do purchase orders in Printers Plan. Our first step is going to be going to our Settings tab where we can take a look at or set up our vendors. To do this, expand the Vendors folder, and in here you will see there are two distinct categories, one specifically designed for papers and one specifically for everything else. For this example, we'll open up our paper vendors. In here, we can see that this is much like any other place in Printers Plan where we input contacts. If you're familiar with using the Customers tab, you should feel right at home here. Let's open up Atlantic Paper and take a look. As we can further see, it is just information like any other customer in Printers Plan. Some key fields of importance are the email address, as this will be used for the address that we send our purchase orders to, as well as the vendor number, as we will need this when we create templates, which I demonstrate later. It's also worth noting that you can apply notes to the vendor, or if you no longer desire to use a vendor, you could switch them to on hold or hidden. Now that we've talked about vendors, let's talk about assigning them to a service. To do that, we can simply open up the service and go to the More Properties. Here, we can see that we have a default vendor assigned to Raven Promo for this service. Anytime we create a purchase order using this service, it will pull Raven Promo's contact information. We also have a SKU of 1234 for our part ID. Before we demonstrate doing a purchase order, let's talk about the Quick Notes feature. Upon adding some notes here, we can have these actually propagate into our email message for our purchase order. To send a purchase order, right-click on the service and select the purchase order utility. Here we can see some of the default information propagating. We have our vendor information, and by default, it knew it was set to Raven Promo, so it pulled that. The default for the ship to is the customer's ship to address. But it is worth noting that if we wanted to send it back to us or to another vendor, that we could assign that right here by clicking one of these. It is also worth noting that if we did not want to send this to Raven Promo, we could use our vendor tab again to select a separate vendor. Our next field of importance is our purchase order number. This is unique to each purchase order and is the job number, item number inside of said job, and the service ID. Due to this number, you will never have the same purchase order appear more than once in Printers Plan. Our PO date is the date that we will be sending this purchase order, and our ship date has not been set on the work order, but if it had been, this would propagate into this box right here. We can see that it pulled the quantity, the description, which is the service name, as well as the unit cost and total cost from the work order. However, it does not have any information on shipping and tax. If we wanted to add this, we would need to do this manually, and as we notice, it will update our total. Next here are our instructions. These are held within our template. These are the instructions that were in our template, and here are the quick notes that we had added to the mug. Additionally, here we have our SKU that we put in for this service. To email this purchase order, we will simply click Email PDF and generate the PDF. Much like sending any invoice in Printers Plan, our attachment is right here. It has pulled our email body template as well as our notes. Let us send this. Now that I've demonstrated sending a purchase order, I'd like to talk to you about customizing some of these fields. Inside of your Printers Plan installation folder, there will be a Documents and a Vendor Documents folder. Furthermore, one down, we have Templates. By default, Printers Plan will pull the PO default.txt. However, if you assign your purchase order to a service, then it will know to pull this vendor's specific PO template. The naming for a vendor-specific PO template will always be PO vendor followed by vendor number.txt. As a reminder, we can figure out our vendor number by opening up the vendors table, clicking on one of the contacts, and looking at that number in the upper left-hand corner. Since we have already sent a purchase order using vendor 103, which is Raven Promo, let's take a look at vendor number 6, Atlantic Papers template. The first field we see here is our PO number. As you recall, by default, this was the job ID, item ID, service ID. We can overload that by simply putting in here jobs.job number, items.item number. Our vendor is the address of this vendor. As our service is already assigned to have this information to know which vendor it is using, and that vendor has full information, we will leave this blank. Our ship to us field will be added to the ship to block because as this is a paper service, we will not be sending this directly to the customer. So we would like to override this to always have our shop's address. The description, which by default was the service name, can have a default assigned to it as well. We will not be doing that for the purpose of this. Our instructions and our email are our next two fields. Our instructions are somewhat separate than our email because we may need to edit these for each individual purchase order. So to demonstrate that, we will just adjust this. Below that, we have our email. This is the email that will be sent, and as we can see, our instructions are being propagated into here. So whether we manually edit these or just allow the default to go in, they will always appear at the bottom of our email, so assuming that this field is here. Speaking of fields, we have the fields for PO templates.txt file. What this does is it has a simple description of each of the blocks that I had described earlier, as well as a list of every field that you can address inside of a purchase order. It is worth noting that there are 83 total fields divided into 10 categories as listed here. I will not go into detail on listing them all to protect your time. Now, let us send a purchase order using our updated template. As we can see, stuff has changed. We are no longer going to default to the customer. This is being sent back to us. And our purchase order number is now just 244-1, job number and item number. Our service ID is being left out. We can send this just as we did the last one. The next thing I'd like to show you is our Intelligent Job Documents feature. This requires you to be on Printer's Plan 2020 or later, but if we open up our Documents tab, we can actually see purchase orders that we have generated for this customer. If you are on 2020 and you do not see that, you will need to enable Intelligent Documents. To do that, go to your Settings tab, click on General Settings, and under Shop Options, there is a drop-down to enable Intelligent Documents. Last thing I would like to show you is our data source. You will probably be working from a workstation and not have copies of all of these templates on your workstation. So to do such, we can use the Change Data Source folder and point our vendor documents to the proper place on the Printer's Plan server. Ours is already set, but I will walk you through this for the purposes of demonstration. Documents, vendor documents. Thank you for your time for watching this video, and please let us know if you have any questions on doing purchase orders, and have a wonderful day.